Up nice and close and personal. Good evening, everyone. Margaret Connor, President of SAIL Senior Advocates for Independent Living. I spoke to the board on July 16th, sharing information about SAIL's accomplishments with the funds that you provided us in the year of 2024 here. I followed up with an email to the Village of Sister Bay board members asking for the support in the amount of $10,000 for the coming year, along with an estimated budget that I attached to it for you to review. The Sister Bay senior population is approximately 53%. These are all tax-paying residents. We need the Village of Sister Bay to support our efforts in helping seniors to age in place. We are volunteer-based and we believe in neighbors helping neighbors. This is all of you in our community. As we age and our health declines, or family isn't here to support our seniors, they should not have to be alone or lonely. Many are just needs a little extra support in their homes to stay there. That is who we are. I'm asking again for the Village of Sister Bay to support us in providing the $10,000 we need for our cause in 2025. Please consider our request for support, and I thank you for allowing me to present again. Did everyone get a copy of the budget? Because I brought extras if you did.
It's in our packet.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Joanne Morris. I'm also with SAIL, and I'm also a resident of Sister Bay. I function as the treasurer of our organization. And over this past year, with the funding of $9,400 from both the Village of Sister Bay and the Town of Liberty Grove, we've launched our business model. It includes our logo, an interactive website, telephone software, and we've given presentations to the community. We already have 14 volunteers who will begin to add, so now we can begin to add members to provide the services for those over age 65. This year, we are requesting, as Margaret said, $10,000. And as you have a chance to look at our budget, you will see where the needs are. Thank you.
I'm not gonna get up first, close and personal like you. Good evening. I'm gonna read this because I'm still on drugs from my accident. Good evening, my name is Faye Blue, a resident of Sister Bay and a member at large for SAIL. I spoke before you a year ago to tell you how excited I was to learn of the village concept coming to Northern Door. I'm a year older, apparently not wiser, as I made a huge mistake resulting in a dislocated elbow, but gratefully I lived. I'm here tonight as a prime example of why SAIL is so important for our residents. This week, I have had to rely on 6 wonderful people to pick me up from the hospital, grocery shopping, doctor appointments, a trip to the bank and pharmacy, and again to get me here tonight. I will continue to need help for several months. This type of help is needed every day by our neighbors for one reason or another. As Margaret stated, our dedicated members have accomplished so much in the last year, we are amazed ourselves. We need your continued support. Please consider us again this year. Thank you very much.
Anyone else in the public would like to speak?
Sorry.
Is there anybody else out in the public that would like to speak? Anybody online?
No.
Okay,
Me, just, or Mr. Chair, just for the president, just for the record, there were some other items that came in that were actually in the packet. One from the Department of Administration, and then one from the Sheriff's Office. And then we had the one from SAIL that was referenced by our speakers.
Ask a quick question. The one that we got from Department of Administration, do we get that every year about this time?
Yes.
We do? Good. And they do that because,
Provide you a population estimate?
right, just to,
Well, I
Very
know
nice.
that it's helpful for voting purposes. It allows us to
I
have-
see that, in the
Yeah.
last paragraph, okay.
It also triggers different things, like if you get over a certain population, you're eligible for different programs or.
Okay. Interesting. So it's preliminary estimate. So when do we get the final? Or don't we ever? We don't till the
I'm
census.
trying to think if it comes June, July, maybe never.
I think it's with the census, I'm not
It's
sure.
not for now. Okay. All right, thank you.
And on to 6A. Presentation by Baird. Taxable general obligation refunding bonds.
Okay, so Justin Fisher from Baird is gonna actually present the numbers for us. He periodically does this about once a year, or he did last year and then he's trying. And the purpose of this, of course, is to help us understand when we borrow money or do bonding, the financial impact it's gonna have on us. So, so Justin Fisher
Justin?
is gonna speak to us.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's good to see everyone again. So since I was here in February, one of the projects that has taken place since then was the broadband financing. So this spring, the village went out and borrowed for a Board of Commissioners State Trust Fund loan program loan. That rate right now is at a 6.25%. It was really meant to be a short-term financing. And then the plan would be to refinance that into longer-term financing with, at the same time, we do the long-term financing for the public works building that we talked about this earlier this year. So we're trying to team it all up at the same time. And so tonight, what you are going to be considering is the refinancing of that Board of Commissioners loan into a longer-term financing with ideally a lower interest rate that we're going to get. So in front of you, there's a presentation back, and I'll go through the borrowing details. We'll go through the timeline, financing illustration, and then geo borrowing capacity. So just to kind of summarize the financing on there on page 2, the estimated size of the borrowing is going to be $3,555,000. It's going to be a taxable general obligation refunding bond of the 2024 state trust fund loan that was already taken out and closed. It's going to have a 20-year financing term, and general obligation debt, that's the longest term that you can do per state statute. So that's why it's not going beyond or less. It's really to match up the useful life of the project, 20 years. First interest would be April 1 of 2025. So again, having a first payment come next year so we can put it on the debt service levy for next year's tax bills. Callable April 1 of 2033 or any date thereafter. So on that particular day, we could take a look at it, potentially refinance, pay it off, etc. So it gives you that flexibility in the event interest rates go further down. The estimated interest rate is a 5.75%. Now, again, this is conservative planning. Again, like what I've shown you in the past, like to be conservative for planning and then hopefully come in at a much lower interest rate when we go out to the market. Because again, it's really the market that drives what interest rate you're going to receive when we go out there. The max parameter interest rate is a 6%. And one quick thing I want to clarify is the public works facility project that is being done on a tax exempt basis because the village is going to own that facility. There's no private use components tied to it. So it can be done on a tax exempt basis. Whoever buys these bonds reaps the benefit of getting tax exempt status on that debt. This, for instance, is going to be a taxable financing because it has a private use component. You're teaming up with a private partner in the broadband project. And ultimately, because of that private use, it has to be done on a taxable basis, which has a little bit higher interest rate tied to it. So that's the distinction of why there needs to be two different issues, one being taxable, one being tax exempt. So the timeline here, village board will consider the parameters resolution and taxable geo refunding bonds tonight. Authority for the final sign off of sales within designated parameters to the village administrator or finance director treasurer. Same process as what you approved earlier this year for the public works. This is where we're going to be working with Vlad and Julie over the next couple of months is to put together what's called official statement. What this is basically contains all the financial information about the village It's put into an offering document that's then sent out to the general marketplace, so banks, insurance companies, anyone that buys municipal bonds is going to evaluate it and then ultimately submit bids to give you, and we're good, then you go with the lowest interest rates that are offered. So that's kind of the process there. We're gonna be going through the bond rating process. So earlier this year, the village was upgraded from an A+ rating to a AA-. That's a good thing. AA- is a good category. That's considered high quality municipal bonds when we issue it in the marketplace. The higher the bond credit rating, the lower the interest rate you're going to receive, because in the marketplace, that looks more secure. So the more secure, the lower the interest rate you're potentially going to receive. So that was great news. So we're going to be going through that process here over the next month, getting on a call with Moody's and ultimately telling them why the village of Sister Bay is the greatest village in the world. Then come October, if the market is strong and meet the board's parameters, that's when we'll look to jump into the marketplace and lock in the interest rate. And then the closing would occur November 12th of 2024. So that's kind of the timeline. Now let's jump into the actual details of the long-term financing. So this is something that myself, Julie, Vlad, and Tasha at the time really kind of looked at this over a multiple year period to get to this point. We talked about this earlier this year about all the planning and where you were to where you are today, and where potentially we're looking in the future, knowing that you've got these capital projects that are being contemplated. And how does this all fit into the picture? Can you do everything you want? That's where you potentially are going to get, capped, similar to where you were a long time ago. And we don't want that to happen. So we're kind of looking at all different pictures, trying to model in everything that you've got here and saying, okay, do you have the capacity to be able to do this? What is it going to do to the tax rate for your taxpayers? And does it all make financial sense? So when you look at this page, I'm going to kind of walk you through from the left side of the page to the right side of the page. So the left side of the page, that's your existing debt service. So that's what's outstanding. That's what you've already borrowed for over prior years. So you can see the debt service levy is just over $1 million. And it stays at that $960,000 until 2031. What the village has done to reduce that levy is use different funding sources. So like the Pratt tax and other different funding mechanisms to be able to reduce that debt service levy and reduce the impact to the taxpayers. What's nice is that tax increment district number 1, which was created a long time ago, it didn't do very well for a long period of time. Then, over the last 5+ years, things have really taken a turn for the positive. Just driving through the community, it's just bustling, at this time, seeing everyone go to dinner and shops, and it's just awesome to see. Well, that's really helped be able to get this plan to work, because the tax increment district number 1 can now support itself. Before, it was relying on the taxpayers to help subsidize essentially that tax increment district for a period of time. It no longer needs that support. It can support itself. So now it can pay its own debt service. So there is some outstanding debt that's tied to tax increment district number 1. So that's about $340,000 that now tax increment district number 1 can pay itself versus putting it on the general levy. So that's where that kind of purple bar or the column there, you can see how it's $840,000. That's the $500,000 that was projected from different funding sources, plus the additional $340,000. So that's a huge positive for the village, is that tax increment district number 1 is so successful now that you can do this. That really, brings us to our next column, which is the net existing debt service. So I highlighted it there in yellow because as of this year, 2024, your levy for debt service was $850,000. So that's where you have it on the levy. That's what's being taxed to the taxpayers as of today. With all these different funding sources coming in, it really reduces your future impact dramatically. So then your debt service essentially would drop down to 108 if you apply all that money. And again, We know we got the 340,000, whether you use the other 500,000 towards reducing the debt, that's up to you. That's up to you. Then what we say was, okay, we got this huge drop. This is what's allowing us to be able to take on some of these projects that have already been approved and borrow for. But it also allows us to do that long-term planning at the same time. So the $4 million, that's what was approved earlier this year. That's when you saw me making that presentation. What we're talking about today is the goal there, the broadband project, the taxable general obligation refunding funds. Then we took it a step further to say, what else is on that long-term 5-year CIP and beyond? What do you got coming up? The admin building, that was guesstimated at $3 million. The Mill Road Triangle project, $2 million. So when is that gonna happen potentially? It could happen in 2025, it could happen in 2026, but let's model it out just so we know what things may look like if you do make a decision eventually and later this year, next year, whenever, to approve that project. How does that debt service come into play? Then what we did is we said, okay, let's take a look at what the tax increment district number 1 has essentially taken from the general fund over that early period of time, which ended up being $2.5 million. So essentially, when the tax increment district number 1 was created, it didn't have enough revenues to support itself, so it was borrowing from the general fund. And essentially, what it happens is you hope that the tax increment district number 1 is going to eventually repay the general fund. That's what's supposed to happen, and it's going to happen now that tax increment district number 1 is so successful. So it's got enough tax revenue in there to be able to do this. So now it's going to start paying back the general fund starting in 2026. And you can see kind of the different projection amounts that are there and to get up to that $2.5 million. So it's going to be spread out over a period of time. Essentially, using the money that's needed to manage the tax levy. So essentially, you don't have that large tax impact that we're trying to avoid. So then we get to that combined debt service column. So again, you're at $850,000 in 2024. It's basically going to stay the same, $850,000 in 2025. And then you actually have about a couple $100,000 drop in debt service. So at that particular point, you can make the decision, do you keep the debt service levy at the $850,000? Or do you have it drop? The question for you then is, how do you want to utilize those other funding sources, the Pratt tax, et cetera? That's where you have to decide on how you want to manage that levy. But essentially what this is showing you is that you can get these projects done if you utilize those different funding sources and keep the debt service impact basically to 0 based on these projections. That's the ideal situation. So that's what we're showing you in this plan. And again, it's all because tax increment district number 1 has really turned around over the recent years and been so successful. So I think the page 4, if you look at that page, is a nice representation. I've shown this to you in the past, but it really gives a nice visual of where we were 2017 to where we are today. Because 2017, when we started working with the village, it was kind of like, okay, here's your picture today. We need to pay off debt, be very prudent with how we look at the money, because you don't have a lot of capacity here. We don't know what's going to happen with the growth. We don't know what's going to happen with tax increment district number 1. And so we need to just kind of put things on pause and try to, and you've done a very good job being very prudent with your money. Watching your projects and so forth. You haven't done really any large projects over that period of time with general obligation debt. So for those of you that don't know, you're allowed to borrow up to 5% of your equalized valuation. So when we're thinking about where you were along 2017, you were at a valuation that was half of where you are today. You've grown that dramatically since 2017. So in 2017, you can see the black bars, that's your outstanding debt. That's what was outstanding at that particular period of time. And you can see how the debt goes down over time because you're paying it down over time, year over year. And then as you grow, that gray bar there, you can see how that's starting to increase a little bit over time. And so we were at 27% available capacity, then we went to 34 to 40. And so then we started really starting to, at that point, that's when we started looking at projects saying, okay, we're starting to get across that point where if you need to get projects done, we should probably start planning for it now. So that's when all the planning really started to take place. Then 2021, 22, and 23 happened. And I mean, Sister Bay had tremendous growth over that period of time with your valuations. So that really shot up your available borrowing capacity to a point where at the end of 2023, you had 77% capacity. Not saying you would ever want to go back down to that 27%, but it gave us comfort that, yes, you can get things done again. And you're not going to be in a position where you're going to be stuck. We don't want to go back to that position. So what we did then is we modeled in everything that we just talked about. The public works, the broadband, the administration, the marina, Mill Road, and then what would that potentially leave you with in the available borrowing capacity. And you can see that in this model using a 2% growth factor to your valuation, you've been growing, much more than that over the last several years. And again, I want to be conservative. Hopefully you grow more than 2%, but if you I'd rather be just conservative in the projections. So at any point, you're still going to have over 60+% remaining capacity. So you're able to get the projects done. You're going to continue to pay down your debt over time as you're being strategic about potentially taking on these future projects. So that's going to be up to you to decide on those the admin and the other projects. But we wanted to try to model in everything to see, one, how does it impact your taxes if there is any? Two, do you have the capacity to even do this? And where do you potentially look going into the future? And I think, after evaluating with the team here for many, many years, we're to the point where you can at least get started with some of these projects. It gave us comfort. Any questions?
So you mentioned TID one, I know that some of us have been around longer, familiar with the story of TID one, where how things change for us a bit. We're likely to have another TID come in here. How common is it for a TID to go negative like that right away?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with the timing, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
When seeing the housing crisis was a huge where valuations throughout the state, it wasn't just Sister Bay. The whole state saw their valuations drop and their, equalized value and so forth. That has a big impact on a tax increment district because one, development doesn't, kind of stopped during that period of time. And when you're planning infrastructure projects and other things, yeah, there was debt that was taken on. And it would put us in the red. Planning on future development that never came.
And the village also bought property for good reason, the village did for very good reason, and I'm glad they did it. But we bought property inside a TID, which kind of put us back there. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, if we do this next TID, it's not likely, do you think it's likely that it would end up being negative? Like TID one ended up, there's that.
I would say that there are ways you want to try to mitigate that risk. There's different routes you can go, whether it's, if it's just an incentive for a developer to come, you could do what's called a pay-as-you-go type financing, whereas they have to perform, they have to develop something, they have to generate some tax revenue. And if they don't get any incentive. And they could get a little portion back, year over year until that's satisfied. That mitigates a lot of the risk. So if they don't perform, they don't get an incentive, that doesn't put you in the red. So there's all sorts of different things you can look at, and if it's infrastructure, then yes, you want to have a development ideally lined up, ready to go. With an ironclad developers agreement, but there's, anytime you do a taxing rate district, there's going to be risks. But that's your only economic development tool that you have. That's all the Wisconsin municipalities have, and that's why there's several hundred tax increment districts throughout the state of Wisconsin, because that's what developers expect these days in Wisconsin. If they want to come here, if they want to decide between Sister Bay and Egg Harbor, and Egg Harbor's offering an incentive, and you aren't, that's up to them to decide where they want to do their development. So it's a competitive process, but you try to mitigate it as best you can. And that's what Julie and Vlad are constantly looking at, with us, and trying to say, let's pump the brakes on this one, or this one potentially does make sense.
Could you explain briefly how a tax increment district works?
Yeah, so a tax increment district, think about an area that you as a village believe is ripe for development, but for whatever reason, it's just not being developed. I mean, I see this all over the state where, it's a great piece of property. Everyone believes it's a great piece of property, but why hasn't it been developed? How do you get that to be developed? So you create what's called a tax increment district boundary. And that, pretty much that value of that parcel is frozen at the time of creation of that tax increment district. So say it's $100,000 is what that property is valued at. Well, then once a development goes into that particular parcel and say now it's $1 million, that $900,000 difference that you've now generated gets taxed. And that tax revenue goes into the tax increment district to then help pay for any expenditures, whether it be incentives, infrastructure, whatever, to be used for that type of stuff. And so the more development you get within that, the higher value you get, the more tax revenue you get, the more projects you can do in that particular area from something that you didn't have before.
And what is the benefit to the developer?
The developer, well, my guess is that they are in it to try to make money. There's a reason they're gonna develop, is there must be some benefit. I mean, you think of, there's plenty of projects that you could point to in this community that have been in tax increment districts that.
I think one of the benefits to a developer, and Sister Bay does not use it, is, as Justin was talking about, it can be used as an incentive to the developer, like we'll pay for the road. We'll use our money to pay for the road if you come in and develop in this district. We don't do that because we haven't had an issue, having to get people here. They come here because they want to be here. So we have not used that tool, but we could. And that would be the type of incentive that we could offer a developer in that district. That we
Okay,
could
so the
offer
district
somebody
is
in-
not automatically benefiting the developer.
When you said,
Would they choose between Sister Bay and Egg Harbor? I was wondering what made it beneficial for them to choose one over the other.
I can tell you that one of those reasons, there's probably a variety of them. But Sister Bay is the only community north of Sturgeon Bay that has sewer and water.
Right, I was just wondering how that related to the district. Like what?
A developer would just want to come,
Right.
they're, depending upon what kind of project they have, that's very important to them. And as Julie said, we have not given, any incentives because we have not had a problem having people come and develop it within the village. Not saying that that can't change in the future if we want it to,
Right.
but we have.
Or we may be putting a road in that TID, and then developers want to come because finally they don't have to pay for that infrastructure. So something like that. Okay.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
My name's Louise. So on the borrowing structure on page 2, so we, it says the estimated interest rate is and 3/4. I understand that we go out and shop it. I put the official statement out there and people shop it and we go with the lowest interest rate. Is there a time? It looks like, is there a deadline for when we have to get? When we have to put this thing in place?
Not necessarily. I mean, we would want to definitely do it by the end of the year. Just to get it on the levy for next year. For
Okay,
planning purposes. But if all of a sudden between now and early October, when we would anticipate to potentially look into going into the market,
uh-huh,
if all of a sudden the Fed comes out and, something is released economic wise that shoots up interest rates.
Yeah.
Changes the world, well then, yeah, we may want to wait. It may make sense to wait. If we believe that it's just a reaction. But that's why we want to get it lined up for October.
mhm,
So it gives us plenty of time to get through that reaction period. I mean, we saw plenty of reactions over the last 2 months.
right,
And here we are, where, in 10-year treasury say was at 4.25 not too long ago. Now it's down to 3.80.
right,
And that was just over a couple of week period. So it could jump back up and it could be just reactionary where we want to let it come back down for a period, let things settle in.
who sets the parameter for the maximum interest rate?
That's just up to you, whatever you want to decide. 6% is pretty much, so you have a 6.25 right now on your loan.
Okay.
6% obviously is not, put it this way, if we went at 6% or higher, I would want to get in front of you. I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to lock in the interest rate at that rate. I would
Right.
want to come explain what's going on in the marketplace,
Okay,
why we want to potentially hold it.
okay,
But I think, if we were in the market today, we'd be closer to say like less than a 5.25.
right. But we're not gonna go back out again until,
So we got some time.
yeah, sometime before the election,
So
so,
there's gonna be some volatility between
Yeah.
probably now and then.
or and after, I think, but
Yeah, absolutely.
it seems like it depends
Absolutely,
on what
and so-
happens. I don't know, I don't know,
And fingers crossed that the Fed does what they say, well, not say, but
right,
everyone believes that September is gonna be the first cut.
yeah, okay. And then, my other question is, this is on page 3. So we're taking on 12.55 million in debt over 24 months, right? I'm just adding it up. So I add up public works, broadband, admin, Mill Road, right?
Yes,
Now, like back here, I'm sorry, on this page, you have Marina.
yeah,
Why is that in there?
so that ideally, if you were to approve that type of project, that would be funded by the marina.
Right,
So that's why we kept it separate, that it should have its own funding source to pay for that
so that's
project.
the Marina, I'm assuming it's the Marina building, I guess, is that what you
Yes.
were, somebody thinking? Okay.
So that again is up to you to decide. We just wanted to model in from a borrowing capacity, because it's not gonna have any impact on your actual levy.
Yeah,
Because again, the marina should be covering that debt payment.
but we borrow the money, right?
Correct, and that's why I factored it into the borrowing capacity.
Okay, okay. All right, I was just confused by that. Okay, so now I'm looking at the third to the last column on the far right side. And I understand the actual levy. Now I'm looking at mill rate. Right, so am I right that the mill rate, in, 24 that's actual or is that estimated? This says estimated.
So this is using the 2023 equalized TID out
Okay.
value, and that's basically looking at the fair market value.
Okay,
So that's $1.16. If you keep the levy the same and you grow 2%. Again, if you're growing, your tax base size is getting larger, but you're keeping your mill rate the same, your mill rate would actually go down a
Mhm.
little bit.
mhm,
And that's what ideally would happen is that if you grow 2%, it'll go down a couple cents.
mhm.
If you don't grow at all, it would stay the same.
Okay,
And vice versa, if you lost value, go up.
okay. So the obvious question is that, does this kind of borrowing over this period of time lead the village to, I know we had a tax increase last year that did not leave a good taste in anybody's mind. And I'm not gonna, I don't wanna answer those questions. So, would this kind of borrowing is there any assurance that this kind of borrowing won't have that impact on our 2025 budget?
From the debt service
Okay.
mill rate perspective, this is all I can tell you.
Okay.
You know, there's all different factors that go into the budget process.
Uh-huh.
But from a debt service.
Of course.
perspective,
From a
I
debt
could say
service
that, yes,
perspective.
it'll stay the same as where you are in 2020, or at least based on this plan.
Okay, all right, because is there any risk to, I know there's a risk, I get it, but to service this kind of debt, you know, because over the next couple of years, I guess it's the same question that that Nate asked, right? I mean, is there any risk to this?
I mean, there's always gonna be risk. I mean, the biggest risk would be that hypothetical offsetting revenues applied. that
Right, I
second
don't
column.
know what that means, but, whatever it means, it looks like 5.9 million of that is from, TID one, right? That 840 grand,
Well, 340,000 of that 840 each.
sorry,
year
and then the 500,000 is the other, sorry.
is a 500,000.
Yep.
up.
Yep. So that's the risk,
That's the risk.
scale of 1 to 10, big risk, little risk?
Well, the nice thing that you have is that column that's way over on the far right side, that service fund balance applied.
Yep,
You're owed that from tax increment district number one,
mhm,
$2.5 million. It's in your own.
mhm,
You can push that money back from tax increment district number one into the general fund whenever you want. So if those revenues don't come in on the left side of the page, you could apply some of the tax increment district number one funds that's owed to the general fund earlier than what I have in here,
mhm.
and manage that levy that way.
And we have talked about doing that perhaps with the Millville, or I'm sorry, the triangle.
Right, that we might not have to borrow at all for that.
Yeah. By using the TID dollars.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's still an option of moving the admin building from 25 to 26, how does that affect it?
Who said that?
No, but I'm just asking how it affects it, nobody said it. I just said. it. But if we
No.
move that out from 25,
That's totally fine. That's
well, this
totally-
says dated October 1st, 2025. What does the date mean?
That's when we're just projecting the closing of the financing to occur,
The closing of the financing.
closing of the
Okay.
financing.
What comes first, the closing of the financing or the starting of the building?
The closing of the financing kind of goes hand in hand with the start of the project. You kind
So
of,
ideally, that's when. Okay, ideally, that's
yeah,
when
you kind of know. you
everything's
have to
done
put-
and it's laid
yeah,
out and we're gonna start
exactly.
building and.
Yes,
But it may be to our advantage to do the short-term financing again, right?
so you
Before
can
we
always
go into-
do what's called a construction financing. If you
Uh-huh.
aren't sure exactly what that final cost is going to be, or if you think, hey, maybe we're gonna have some revenues that we can use to reduce the long-term borrowing, you can do a short-term financing for a period of time. Once project costs are finalized, at that particular point, you can decide, well, we didn't need the full amount of money, so let's take, give the extra money back and do a longer-term financing, what we actually need to borrow. Because you don't want to be borrowing long-term necessarily for something you don't need, right? If you only need $3.5 million, but you borrow 4, that would be a problem. So you only want to borrow 3.5 long-term.
Yeah.
So there's
Who do you
different
get-
things you can.
Who do you get short-term financing from?
You could do it, so like, you could do a state trust fund loan, probably not, that route. We did that on this one because it was taxable. You could go to the local bank,
What's the
depending on
most
the size.
desirable? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is. There's all sorts of different routes, and my job is to make sure that you get a better interest rate.
Right.
And you're not locked in at a ridiculous rate.
Mhm.
And so in the past, what we've done with the villages, we've actually done like short-term financings where we bid it out to local banks as well as national banks because we have connections to banks all across the country.
Mhm.
And they have, in your past, beat your local bank by a wide margin.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's hard.
But
Yeah.
that's part of the process.
Gotcha, okay. But we haven't borrowed anything for the admin building yet, right? No,
Correct.
but this is just a scenario that you laid out.
Yep.
Okay, okay. Sorry, I asked a lot of questions. And I think that's, Well, I had to. Yeah, that was it. The marina was, when does the marina start kicking in? Well, you have it for 2026, right? No,
2025 is when I have modeled in there.
Yeah.
Just again, I know there's been, when is it actually gonna happen, if it does happen? I wanna just model it in earlier, just to see what it
Sure.
would do.
Okay,
If we push it out, it just makes the capacity.
all right, well, thanks for your patience.
Yep.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We don't, we can get a motion to accept, right?
No, we don't need a motion. Except
On to 17. I'm gonna keep accepting this one. and hand it over to you.
Okay, so 7E is the resolution for the general obligation bonds to fund the broadband project. And the way this works is we're actually told exactly, Quarles and Brady, who does the bonds, gives us the resolution, says this, don't change it, you have to adopt it just the way it is. So what you have here is all put together by Quarles and Brady. And this is the same process we used last time. Justin would have to answer any questions. I'm not sure, Vlad's been doing a lot of work on this as well, so he might be able to answer some of them. But it's required to proceed with the plan that Justin just presented to.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay. On to 8A. Discussion action items, award bid on parks maintenance facility.
Okay, so as the packet says, the Parks Property and Streets Committee, they put this project out for bid. They had several bids come in. Alliance was the lowest bidder. And so this would award the bid to them, and we could then proceed with the project. This would take a motion.
Second.
Motion by Bertle, second by Allison. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 8B.
Okay, kind of the same thing. We had to do an RFP. This came out of the Utilities Committee. Every 2 years, they have to do a rate study. They did an RFP. Robert E. Lee is the one who responded. So, the bid is 6,900, so we need a motion to award the bid.
Same motion by Olson.
Second.
My Shampo, quick question.
Yeah.
In the past, was this done by staff?
No, it should have been coming here.
Okay, no, but I mean, like,
Oh,
the rate
the-
study.
The rate study, this one was, years ago, Bob Cochran came up with the model that we used. And, but it was challenged. The town wasn't very happy with how we were doing it. So we put it out for bid to do it, have a third party that does it all the time, work on it.
Okay. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 8C, parking amendments.
This is just introducing an ordinance that'll go before the board next month. But what we do is we introduce it, we feel the board out, see if there's any questions, concerns, or comments, and then we come back with it as an actual ordinance to adopt. So this, what happened is the Marina Committee weighed in on this, they had some recommendations. It then went to the Parks, Property and Streets Committee, they recommended it to the board. It's, how the ordinance would look. Basically, as you can see, the red is what's added, the strike through is what gets deleted, and then there's some renumbering that goes on.
So I asked Dave about this and he said it was correct, but I thought we talked about 52 spots on, in the third paragraph, whereas this says provide 23 commercial vendor and patron stalls and also provide 15 stalls for the general public parking purposes at the marina parking around Scandia. I thought we talked about having 52 stalls and this doesn't add up to 52. So
Yeah, I-
what
I
happened to the
think
other ones?
If I remember correctly, Allison, it was in 2018 that they had decided there were 50 stalls, that 52 stalls there that they could offer. But I think that ended up, I'm not sure how that was calculated back then. I wasn't here at that time. But we had discussed that because saying, the marina was letting the park, the public park in there, when in effect, they could have been using those stalls themselves.
Right, but
Not
this
use the
23 plus
long-term
15 only adds up to 38, so I was wondering what happened to the other 14 stalls that we discussed.
Well, these were the numbers that I had that we had talked about at that time, but or from my notes, but the 52 was what they had proposed in 2018. And I don't know what happened. I think they made a lot of them into trailer parking.
Okay, maybe that's what happened. And I went back and looked at our marina notes and we were discussing 52 spots, but Dave said this was correct. I was just still a little confused.
Do you remember there was that email that, they had only sent you one side of it and the other side didn't get scanned in?
Oh,
I think those were the numbers that
Okay.
were missing.
got it. My only other comment on this was the limit of 4 hours. Who is going to control that? It's the very last red line on page 69, line 39. Except during Village or Sister Bay Advancement Association sponsored event, no person shall park any vehicle in the parking lots described in excess of 4 hours.
So, the village would have to, Dave would control the marina ones, his staff would be patrolling that one to make sure that people aren't parking there long term. And then we would be looking at the ones in the, our code person would be looking at the other parking lots. Basically what you're trying to do is make sure people aren't camping there all day. We do have an issue right now, in the Waterfront Park restaurant where there are people that park there all day. There are parking limits there, but they don't move, and then the public doesn't get a chance to.
I'm talking about Wild Tomato.
I understand the reasoning, I just don't understand how we're going to enforce it. And then what about people who do want to be at the beach for more than 4 hours? Or what about people who are working somewhere? They just park on the street? Where do they park?
Well, businesses are supposed to provide parking for their staff and guests, and we know downtown that doesn't work out that way.
Right.
So we do allow parking on the street. We do have some public parking. So I have to look at E through J means it's the boathouse, the waterfront, and the sports complex and Pebble Beach, and right by the administrative building. So it's not saying all parking lots are affected by that. It's just certain select ones where you're seeing a lot of traffic. Pebble Beach, we do not want people parking there all day because,
Well, that makes sense.
yeah, so it's not in some of your higher use parking lots. So you have to remember it's E through J.
Okay, and I tried to look at each one of those.
So E through J means the Waterfront Park South parking lot. Okay, on both sides of Mill Road at 2362 Mill Road.
So I could see people parking there for more than 4 hours.
Absolutely, they're at the beach. Yeah, I think a 4 hour limit and across the board, painting this with such a broad brush is. I don't think that's
Okay,
really
well,
very,
that's why we discussed it. It went to Parks Committee with that question and that was not changed at the
I
Parks
don't
Committee.
remember that, that is my fault.
Yeah, but that's why we look at it. So we want to change that. We want to change that now. It's easier if we have it in final format when it goes to the public for adoption.
So the goal there is to have turnover in those parking spots. If we were to put a 4 hour limit on there, realistically, unless somebody's going there to look at it immediately after they park. They're gonna have, it's gonna be, I'm gonna guess an hour or two, so it's gonna be 5 or 6 hours that they're effectively using that spot, which is going to be the prime of the day. So I don't know that 4 hours even does what we want it to do.
I don't see any.
I think with the
Even-
extension, with what you're saying, Nate, I think it will do, because then that means that people who are working an 8-hour shift will not be parking there.
It allows the public to come in and use the park.
Yeah,
and-
but it's, so if
People
somebody's
come
at
and
the
go.
beach for 4 hours, they're gonna get up and leave, where are they gonna go? They're gonna go find another place to park? It's a recreation area.
But
It doesn't
according
make
to what
sense.
Nate says, unless you happen to be there when that car pulled in
I gotcha.
and know what time it is, they are gonna be there much longer than 4 hours. It is,
I got it, I understand, but to have it be ticketable. But that's what's gonna happen if we decide to let somebody loose getting tickets all day, then people are gonna get tickets, a lot of them.
We actually have a lot of turnover in those parking lots, believe it or not.
And we know this.
Except for, just by staff walking through there and looking at the vehicles there. There's
How
just,
often does staff walk through there and look at vehicles to see who comes and goes? Do a lot of
Once a
people
day.
do that? Once a day?
I just
so,
wonder if this is needed or if it's just an extra rule that we're needing extra enforcement for.
Well, I guess where I was getting at with saying, well, what's the goal? I mean, like turnover. I understand what you're saying, Denise, but then we are saying we're targeting people that are working. I'm not entirely comfortable with giving tickets to people that are working.
Yeah, and they
Um,
can't leave their shift and go move, and then if they can't even park out at the sports
but
complex.
the point is they don't park in that particular parking lot. That's what the point is.
the waterfront
where-
parking lot has become the wild tomato parking lot.
It always
Public
has been.
cannot-
There's a 15-minute parking, there's a handicap spot, there's a 15-minute parking spot. I've given, I don't know, 15 tickets in the 15-minute parking spot when I was able to give tickets. I'm sure they weren't paid, but I gave them. And some of them were people that were working. Yep, they didn't park there again. They also didn't pay the ticket. But nonetheless, that's how it's always been by waterfront. And you're right, sports complex. It just doesn't,
So people can't even park out there if they wanted to get off the street. Or the parking.
So if we leave this in here, would it require us putting signs at these specific parking lots? No more than 4-hour parking?
We would have to, yeah, what we would have to do is change our signs to reflect whatever the code says.
So
Yeah.
right now, I mean, what we've got for signage,
we have residents that park there.
it
We
refers
taxes
to an ordinance.
for that whole, for whatever we spent on Mill Road.
Right now, our signage refers to an ordinance on the street, correct? I mean, like it says, like, I believe if you. Because we don't say you can't, does it say no 24-hour parking? I could swear it says.
I think
ordinance.
some of them don't refer to an ordinance, because a lot of those ordinances have changed. I'm not sure about the waterfront park.
They don't.
I mean,
I
I'm
know
saying,
on the street, it just says no parking, it doesn't cite an ordinance.
Residents. Sorry, 4 hours, gotta leave. It just, I don't understand. Sorry, this is my fault. I should have noticed it at Parks and I didn't.
oh, that's why we're discussing it here. I would agree with removing. The striking,
Do you wanna send it back to Parks to debate and send back here, or?
Can we just decide now?
Parks. I don't see why we have to send it back.
Can we vote on it?
Not vote on adopting it because we have to introduce the ordinance and then at the next meeting we have to.
We have to have a consensus.
But could we vote on the
I
in
mean, like,
excess of
vote
4
on
hours?
Leaving it or
Or
taking
take
it
a
out?
roll call?
By consensus, you can, sure, you can agree that this needs to be changed, and then in the final one that goes for publication. Would act, I shouldn't say publication, because with this one, it doesn't have to go in the paper, it just has to be noticed on the agenda. But we can change it on that one, sure.
so we're looking for, do we even need a motion here? Is it just? we need to just
Consensus
take-
is fine, whatever, however you want to change it.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah, what
Well,
do we
have,
change
yeah,
it
we
to?
have consensus.
I mean, that,
Well,
I think we heard.
so we're trying to discourage employee parking on the street when the employers that really should be providing employee parking for their employees. So why don't we make it like 6 hours maybe? Cause I mean, I don't think very many people are at the beach for 6 hours.
I don't know why it has to be any hours.
Yeah, I
That's
guess
because we're trying to discourage and
This is, yeah, I don't think there should be whether it's 4 or 10 hours, I don't think there should be a
Then you're
restriction
not-
there.
Kurt, I didn't hear what you said.
I don't want it at all.
Overnight, for sure, I get that, but.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
There was talk at one time about Meters Lake and Lake Geneva and stuff like that. It's like, oh, come on, man. That's just, it's crazy.
So it's gonna
Because
be
if we
okay
as
for-
residents wanna go down, I don't wanna pay a nickel.
So from a consensus standpoint, do we take a vote? I mean,
I think their consensus that we strike 11. That's,
I would like to,
I would like to strike it.
I also.
Kurt said.
And I'd like to remove it.
We have a majority, so I was a no vote.
So there's
I
no.
think we
parking-
need to, I think we just need to address parking issues and just saying that because it's been that way since the parking lot was built, that it's just we don't want to try to improve. But that's fine. I'm in the minority, move forward.
So just to be clear, there's no time restriction whatsoever in these parking lots that we're talking about, except that there is no overnight park.
So just remove 11, leave 10, that says there shall be no overnight parking.
the monthly financial report.
So Vlad has prepared this, hope we can answer any questions, he spent a lot of time on it. Yeah, answer any questions you have.
Page 74. Door County Highway Department, ball fields, $900. Did we get some dirt from them or something, or gravel?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was clean or rolling.
Eric, can you hear us by chance?
Oh,
He hasn't unmuted, sorry. I lost the internet on that computer. It was show up on the screen.
Oh,
Heidi, I'm here.
Did you hear Denise's question?
Denise, can you repeat it again?
Sure, we paid the Door County Highway Department little over $900 for something at the ball fields.
They were rolling the fields.
Thank you. Page 76 at the bottom, septic maintenance. Waterfront park bathrooms, $330. Did we have a problem?
Yeah, our main sewer outlet was clogged. They had to go in and drill it all out, take a urinal off, and actually do quite a bit of work to free some stuff up so things could start flowing again down there.
Thank you. Because normally that's not something you see on something that's hooked up to sewer and water.
So I see Cellcom on here all the time, and I'm wondering, when's the last time the village looked at changing cell providers?
Well, we've talked about it, some of them are on contract, which causes a problem and makes it difficult to shop around, so we've talked about it. Because I've asked that very question, why aren't we changing this? They're all staggered. And what we need to do is let all the contracts run out and then shop around. I think we have extra luck on some of that though before we can do that.
So I know cellular service in Door County can be quite challenging. We're just worried about the village. There's any number of providers that can do it. I think I'm paying $15 a month for my secondary line that I use for when I'm in the village. No contract, so just
And every time I talk to you on the phone, I always have horrible.
that is actually unique to Cellcom phones close to the bluff. Because I have the same problem with Paul. also had a question about what we're paying for GA Computer Services for internet. We're getting it from Charter
It's security monitoring.
per connection. Okay,
My other question, sorry, you done, Nate? Yep. My question was human resources, that's the, company that we're using to help us with human resources, right?
Doing the benefits administration.
Right, but also background services and things like that, okay, gotcha.
Page 82. We have 3 attorney bills that trustee Housen incurred, and I'm just wondering, do any of our board members, do any of us get the opportunity to speak to the attorney, or does that special permission through you, Nate, or?
it would be related to if you're chair. I think the two of those I know are part of personnel. The other one, I think we can get into in closed session. Cause I think that one of those there, I don't quite understand why that's it, but we can, why do we bring it up in the closed session? I think it'd be more appropriate. No one else? Okay, I'll make a motion, we pay the bills in the amount of $678,684.07. Motion by Val.
Second.
Second by Roscoe, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. 8E, Committee Appointments, Housing Committee. Grace reached out and said she was willing to run
Yeah,
this one, so
try.
thank you so much.
Yep, I'm gonna try.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's very important for our village and for 70 families that are waiting in the wings for some kind of roof over their head, so wish us all luck. It's gonna be a lot of work.
So I had a question because I wasn't on the board when it was voted to create a housing committee. What's the mission and the goal of the committee?
Well, we have to get started of
On what?
developing the Woolsey property for low-income housing, for,
Low income housing?
well, affordable housing.
The mission is right in the staff report, Louise.
Okay, all right, so,
I guess one thing I would point out is it's not limited to. It was just wherever we can do
Right.
housing.
Correct. And then I know that there's a grant coming up that's available. It's a federal grant that, that's something we could apply for, but there are deadlines for those things. So we need to start thinking about that as well.
so I'm reading this and I'm looking at, have you approached the people, that you are recommending that on this list, like Gus, and have you talked to all these folks?
I have talked to Lauren Aurelius, and Julie is helping me reaching out to some of these people because I don't know them all personally. I reached out to Annika Johnson. She has not gotten back to me yet. But I do know I know people a little bit from the Goose and Twigs, but they're all people that I'm not really close with, but they're willing to help.
Okay, Lauren said she would join,
Yes,
and Marissa Downs,
yes,
she is gonna join?
Yes, she said she was never asked, but she was very willing to help.
No, but this is, we're in the process, I think, now of asking, I guess.
So these people have
So
already
these
been
people have
asked.
all been asked and said yes.
Yes,
That was my question.
okay.
Okay. Okay, great. So as part of this process, so the housing committee shall consist of I got that. The committee is tasked with identifying a housing model, impediments to affordable housing, and address design, financing, and physical layout, as well as other aspects involved in the community provided workforce housing. So is it workforce housing? Is it affordable housing? Is it, what is it?
It's all one and the same.
Workforce is affordable. Okay, but if somebody isn't in the workforce, can they still be out there? We're building for them too?
That's part of the model they have to look at. That was the charge the board gave them.
Okay,
I mean, they've also talked about senior housing.
we talked about senior, I mean, I was on the Wiltsey committee. So it doesn't really resemble what we talked about on Wiltsey, that's why I'm asking. And so in identifying a housing model, there's people on this list that might be qualified to do that, but a lot of them are not. So are we looking for, is the goal in identifying a housing model, is the goal to decide if we're gonna develop it, if we're gonna still own the land, if we own apartments, is that what developing the model means?
Yes, when they talked about last time, Louise, they had, the board had talked about this committee coming up with a model on how that should work and then presenting it. So they're gonna have to come up with some options for us to look at.
Okay.
A couple of, there's a million stories, on the internet. But Crested Butte in Colorado is a very successful community that has dealt with workforce housing. There's a lot of them in Colorado. I pulled it up. They have an ordinance. It may or may not be dry reading, but I just think if we look around and see what some other communities are doing, I mean, that's how I've written ordinances before. You look at a bunch, you take what you like, you make it specific to Sister Bay. This one would be a model, see if it would work, present it, move forward. And a lot of them in Colorado have been going on for,
Yeah.
20+ years. or
Telluride
whatever,
is
so they
another one.
have to be doing something right.
Well, my question would be, if when we approach someone that's done it, I would approach someone that's done it recently. 25 years ago is 5 lifetimes ago.
But they're still
It's
doing
very
it.
different. If they're still doing it, great. I would just ask if they would do it again. And I would ask what mistakes they made. And I would look at the demographics. I would look especially, Telluride is a completely different animal. Completely different animal. I know it really well. So, it needs to be similar to what, who we are and that's why I'm just a little bit, I'd like the committee to be a little bit more focused on exactly what affordable is.
Well, usually,
Meaning, like, we're gonna get a builder to be able to build this brand new construction for $300,000?
probably not.
No, it's 400 square foot right now.
We actually had a builder lined up that was gonna build homes for 225, 250.
I'd love to see what those look like, and I'd like to see what strings were attached. That's tough. How big?
So Patrice was talking about this grant, so Biden administration just came out with a program last week, and it is a fast turn and burn. I think you have to have your application in by October. And it is targeted at almost identical to what we have here. It's to address impediments to affordable housing. And the money is for developing models, rewriting zoning codes, infrastructure. You have to have some type of plan that you have to present to the public and get feedback, and then you can apply. And it's to basically do the stuff that we have written right here. So, and I'm guessing it's the only time it's gonna be offered. It was offered in spring and I'm guessing it's gone after that. So, each community can get up to $7 million. So it's one of those things when I was talking to Patrice, you almost have to at least try. So to see, to pay somebody to come in and work with you on the model and on those examples and on those zoning codes, Denise is right. I do the same thing. You look at all these other models, but, maybe a grant can fund a lot of that work to make sure we don't keep going back where people like it or don't, and you actually have somebody work with us to make sure it is something that everybody can get on board with.
So what we paid, heirs. And Stantec and what we saw, we just aren't gonna use, right?
That didn't give us a model.
They showed us, the model, no, but they showed us homes and they showed us, I mean, they just asked us what we wanted. And they gave us what we wanted, which to me is the opposite of what you do. You go to somebody with deep experience, who understands what we need in 10 years. Which will go by in a blink. What we need based on the data they have. We base it on data we have we don't even know how many people live here. So, it's just old, it takes a long time to get it. They have data because they do it. They know demographics, they know the type of municipality we have, they know all of that. Why not? I just think it's, when they certainly, we tell them essentially, look, we're looking for to build a community out there that's affordable for our residents. And they ask questions, but then they say, this is what it looks like you need. This is what it looks like makes sense. This is what looks like it's gonna survive and be relevant and be a community that is vibrant in 20 years. Not in 5 years, probably not even in 10.
I agree that we need some more professional oversight. I'm afraid it's not gonna work as planned. I'm also afraid one of those plans had the possibility to put 1,000 people over there. And I just was at the beach the other day. I'm like, do we want our 1,000 population village to be 2,000 people?
That's not gonna happen. The same people that already live here are just going to happen.
That's not gonna happen. Everybody who lives here is going to keep their places, and then a lot of other people are gonna move there. On Scandia Road, it's just gonna become a highway. I'm very concerned about the number of people that the one plan put out there. So I do think we need somebody professional looking at this to make sure we get it right. I just don't see the plans that we've seen as being right, and who's going to put this all together.
I don't envision, Sister Bay is a small area. I don't know if it's, can't remember, is it 2 by 3 miles? On us putting on 52 acres, the same population, or almost the same, because we're 1,200 in the last census, that encompasses every place else. I don't see that happening. That is not a desirable neighborhood.
No, and that's.
So I don't think that will ever come to fruition. I think we'd all be out of our minds.
I don't think that's the goal at all, to put 1,000 people over
With the
there.
Stantec design, one of them did have the
It was like
possibility.
800.
Oh, yeah.
All the apartments, all the houses.
I have to defend them because that's
what we told them.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's what we told them. But that's what I'm agreeing with Louise, that we don't want to just tell somebody what we want and get it shot right back at us. We want somebody to help us develop this.
There were two things said. There was the plan, which was all the data and the forecasting. And that was to go to a housing committee to take to the next step, but then the housing committee was never formed. Then there was the subdivision, which was, they were instructed, come up with the subdivision. These are your parameters. So they took the work that the housing group had done. And what the plan commission had said, we want cluster, we want 40-acre lots. They did 50 and 90 acre on there. And they came up with that as a model because the contract said you have to come up with a draft for us to look at. So they met their commitment. When it went to the committee, they're like, this goes to a housing committee. So everything was just so they did their work. It all went on hold till we got the housing committee formed, but it's been a year. So you're right. Some of that forecasting and everything has been done.
Yeah, but some of the numbers they gave us weren't good numbers.
Well, do you want to do another one?
I don't want to do another one, no.
I think we also
Um,
need to understand that by working on an affordable housing project, we're not gonna solve the nationwide crisis, right? But we gotta start somewhere. And if it's only 10 homes we can build at an affordable, cost, that's 10 families that will have a permanent home, that already live here.
We had 70 show up that were in apartments, 70 families that were in apartments that are looking to own a home. So we know there is demand there, at least 70.
I don't disagree.
Now, do they all
Absolutely.
qualify? I don't know, but
Exactly. What they wanted and what they can afford.
so it almost has to be a phased approach, right? You're not gonna put 600 homes out there right away. Maybe you start with it. And see how it goes, but
It's a lot.
you gotta start somewhere, and the biggest thing is, you guys, you gotta figure out how you're gonna pay for that infrastructure. Because that's your most expensive part, so, you know. Staff can work with engineers and work through the models that we find, but I understand that. You often prefer somebody who specializes and just does that for a living to come in and talk to you about that and present that. So when Patrice and I talked, it was, if we can get this scheduled and pull it off, we're still gonna try and apply for that grant to get the funding to make that happen.
It scares me for the village to be in the development business. I mean, we just looked at $12 million worth of debt of stuff we're developing.
But we often put in sewer, water.
I know that, but developing a housing,
I don't,
doing a housing development?
I don't know if we would,
No business.
I'm
doing
thinking that would be more like in my mind, I see that like a public-private partnership where we're partnering with somebody who's actually putting it in. We
I just don't
retain,
think we have any expertise.
because we've often talked about retaining ownership, so we could control some of the deed restrictions.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, isn't part of the deed restrictions that we wouldn't have to retain ownership? Isn't, I mean, like, because once we sell it, the deed restriction stays in place moving forward.
Correct, so the way I viewed the way you wanted to go was you work with the developer to see that property developed. We agree to it, we sell the lots, just like we do out on Ava Hope, right? Same thing, we own those lots, we sell them to the developer, we sold them to the housing partnership, we sold them to Paula. There's some other ones out there that, you know, can be marketed to people building townhomes or apartments. We control that and we can put the deed restrictions on we want. The board has said that is what they want to do on that Wiltsey property. They want to be able to put deed restrictions on those lots. And I'll say right now, to make sure they're not used as short-term rentals, make sure they are truly used for workforce housing.
I have no problem with that, of course, it'd be, I mean, everybody
So-
that sells a house should just put a deed restriction on it, so it can't be short-term rental.
Well, it was just in that area.
But
because-
no, I think it should be, I couldn't agree more, I just don't think we have the expertise. That, you know, and I just.
And do the taxpayers want to put the 3.5 million towards growing our community? I mean, do people,
That's where the TIF would help offset all those infrastructure that, if we add a new TID out there, all those taxes would help pay for that infrastructure.
And last year you guys did put that 3.5 in the CIP to get it started. I mean, I don't know where else you're gonna put these people that need housing.
I don't know either. I just don't know if it's going to work as we're assuming. I just see people from everywhere else coming and saying, oh, this looks
Right,
like a
no,
real
other
house.
communities are doing it,
And then we're just going
they're
to
coming here.
grab all these, then we're just
Once
gonna
you
grow
look
our
at Groves, I mean,
population.
That's why they have to come up with the model
Right,
and
and
the
do-
and legal criteria to weight those who live and work here currently.
Well, I'm all for a housing committee. I just was thinking, like Louise said, maybe we need a little more professional oversight, but yeah, if everybody on that committee is willing to do the work, I'm very appreciative.
Well,
we have to-
we have to get this off the ground, otherwise it's just another year is going to pass.
Hey, guys, can I make a quick comment to this housing development? I work with several of my staffers that are very interested in this, and I also want to applaud Sister Bay for putting the effort into making, you know, like the Shoals and all these other developments and apartments and everything like that, for putting in the effort to try to make affordable living up here. I'm not sure how many of you still have young children, but I know that's a concern moving forward that a lot of the guys that I work with have young kids is the affordability of houses around in our, not only in Sister Bay, but in the county and everything. And to hear this discussion and everything like that, you know, it's very encouraging, and I really appreciate the conversation and everything like that. And I do applaud all of you for having this conversation and, you know, being able to relay this back to a couple of my staffers that are life-term renters in Sister Bay that are, you know, fingers crossed that we can get this right and, you know, maybe have some future development in affordable housing still in our little village. So I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in there for you guys, because I know a couple of my staffers would appreciate, you know, the effort that is being discussed right now.
Yeah, I think we had another employee just move, to the south end of the county because they couldn't find it.
You know what? My son would love it. This is not the point. You know, we do it because we have sewer and water. That's why we're doing it. Nobody else can do it.
Correct.
So we get to do it. Doesn't mean that we're in the development business. Doesn't mean that we know what we're doing. That's all I'm saying, you know, and you're 100% right. There will be people that will move here and we can put restrictions on it, and I think we should. I really feel very strongly that we should get out of the development business, out of building things.
But we're not even to that point yet.
I
We
know
don't
that.
have a model.
I know.
But this is just a committee that we're gonna gather ideas and
Okay, yeah.
proposals and things to submit to the planning commission and the village board.
Okay.
And this committee is not going to come up with a development plan. That's gonna have to be a professional
I know, I
group
understand
or
that.
whatever,
Yeah.
so, you know, this is to help our residents.
Completely understand that. I would like to make, and I'd like to make progress with it.
You know, we
And I
don't
don't
wanna
make a
increase the
mistake.
population by 1,000. We just wanna help do
People that
some
want it
effort to
here.
help these young families, senior citizens that they don't have a place to live. They're leaving.
No problem. The Wiltie is our last big chance. That's it. We
Yeah,
bought everything else.
we have to
So,
start
This is
somewhere.
it.
Yeah, and it's,
But all we talked about green space on Wiltie, never talk about that. When we were on the Wiltie committee, there was a very big conversation about green space, not 70% housing. There was a very big conversation about, you know, having a park out there and things like that, not just a lot of houses. So I think that we should look at how many, we have 700 houses in the village. Not condos, houses. So if you wanna, you wanna increase that by 25% and put 140 out there. Think about that. I just think that it needs to be balanced against, you know, the use of it needs to be balanced. Relative to having some open space and some park space and.
Well, this isn't even all of the property, because if you remember the
we were gonna set
presentation,
it aside,
the most northern part
Mhm.
could not be serviced by sewer and water without a lift station.
Yeah.
And so it would make most sense, but that's all your green space area.
And a road.
But I mean,
to
I
it.
think,
Well,
you're jumping ahead without
I
giving
just
them
am trying to ground people in the fact
a
that,
chance,
you know.
the opportunity to do what they're tasked
I
to do.
got you, okay.
I mean, there's something that my head is going to on this housing has been R4. And that's even a few steps away, and what we can do, because that's what the village can really do, facilitate housing.
Right.
And we've set the framework up for that, and we've started doing some things with it. And I think that's gonna probably be pretty important, pretty quick. I mean, like you say, the village, you don't think the village should be a developer, I don't disagree with that. We should look ourselves as a facilitator. I mean, that's what government is here for, it's not to do things, it's to facilitate things, to help things happen. So I think that Patrice has got a whole lot of questions and a whole lot of tangled yarn to unravel
Yeah.
and figure out what you can, and some come back to us, and we probably should bring some professional help at some point, but that doesn't mean you can't start the untangling process and figuring out.
Well, ask who helped them. If you're gonna talk to other communities,
Yeah, I would really like to
ask
see
who
the
helped them.
committee going. I mean, excuse me for saying this, but we're all speaking from our own privilege right here. I think everyone's sitting here already. So we don't know what's going on up there with people that don't.
I do. My son doesn't.
I would say maybe we don't live it. Maybe that would be a fair statement.
We don't live it currently.
Currently,
Doesn't mean we weren't there once.
I was there a few years ago. I'm not anymore. I'm privileged right now. But many people aren't. Think about that.
So I think the committee's a great idea, and I think looking back at those studies are important, where it shows how many people could finance and how much, what people actually wanted. There were relevant things that came out of that study we looked at last year. So we're doing
Again,
that,
what
I
they
think is
wanted, but
important.
their ability to pay for it was whether we could build something that they could really afford. That's what we had to see.
We would need a motion to,
So moved.
Second, motion by Virgil, second by Bill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And if you
Motion
need
carried.
me to come in front from the perspective.
Hey, staff reports.
You can go through the list, or what do you wanna do?
Staff reports?
There was just Megan in here.
Yeah, and they're gonna, if they have anything they wanna highlight. Do we have any questions? We typically accept that, we just.
No, we just,
Okay.
it's there on a case, there, just information.
All right, committee reports. Finance committee. We continue to meet.
I had a question. I have to, I'm so sorry. Let me find the minutes of one of the finance committees. Vlad, at the meeting, at the last finance committee meeting, bear with me, I gotta find the minutes. I had asked if, you could do a projection for, and I know you haven't had time, but if you could, maybe for the next board meeting.
So projection for the wages. So
Yeah, for wages.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the
just-
year,
just
because we were running.
some rates from HR consultant from Sam. For health, dental, vision. Insurance.
Sure.
security. So going into 2025, what the rate's going to be. So I'm using Dasha's Excel spreadsheet.
Sure.
So she has all of those formulas
Okay,
that need that data.
yeah,
Also, on Monday morning, spoke with Brian from, insurance company. So in regards to workman's compensation, so good and bad news. So we're not at the best rated right now due to there's some kind of incident, listing, somebody blamed it. So that will increase, but overall, the other factors, three others, second.
and that, well, actually, Brad, you know, or Vlad, what I was looking for, not so much for 25, but I was asking to see if you could do a projection of where wages are gonna come in for 2024.
2024.
Yeah.
I did put up some.
Because they were running very high through June. I think it was June we were looking at. So I was wondering if, I'd asked if you could do a projection through the end of the year, so we don't wait until the end of the year to see where it ends up.
Actually done that, so let's see if I can connect it.
Okay, I don't need to write the second, but if you can, because I just think we should. I'd like to see it and we should share it with the board.
With the committee, right?
Sorry, with the committee.
Finance or personnel?
I asked that it go to the board actually, and that's what's in the minutes.
Well, it should go to committee first.
Oh, okay, sure.
Especially if they plan.
So that's year-to-date 2020, sorry. But we know we are year-to-date 2024, and I wondered where we were gonna, what the projection of where we're gonna end up for 24.
So just to add one thing on the finance committee, we had talked about this early on, that the budget process, all the details were gonna be at the committee levels, so if somebody wanted to see it, to look at those budgets that were going to the committee level, so the finance committee packet had the notes on it, so everybody could see what is being discussed, what the notes are associated with that. So that when we get to that public hearing, there's not a big discussion about what is this for, what is this for, so just encourage everybody, look at those finance committee, that packet. The next one will have notes as well as a final draft. But just to make sure everybody keeps that in mind.
Right over?
Is it normal for a meeting to be called to order before it's posted time? That's what happened at fire.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The meeting was called to order at 5:55 PM, but it's posted, it's not supposed to begin until 6.
One meeting. The clock was completely wrong. I thought we started late, actually.
Well, this was June's meeting. That's in the packet.
Oh, interesting. I think it was because this clock was fast. I think I was looking at that. And I remember the clock said 6, but I don't think my watch said 6. Good question.
And then it said in those minutes also, on page 5, that's, the joint meeting between the municipalities will tentatively be scheduled for Thursday, July 11th or Thursday, July 18th. Did those happen? Because I was never aware of them.
There was a meeting in July where the fire board had myself and Bud in to just ask us about our upcoming budget processes.
Oh, so it wasn't in the minutes. I thought it was supposed to be a presentation to Liberty Grove and Sister Bay. I thought it meant the entire board.
I don't know, I just know that they did invite both administrators in from both municipalities.
Okay.
So yeah, with the time, I think Stacy was on the phone elsewhere, so she was probably looking at the correct time, and the meeting was actually called based on this clock. I could have mentioned it. I should have said it was too early. So we actually had a meeting since then, which the important part was money needed. The big thing is the radio system that Tasha was aware of, and I think, have you been in touch with Chris Hecht about how many million is it? 26.3 million for the Door County radio system, which the Door County board has approved, and we need to pay our share at some point soon. So we have to make sure we have money.
And what is our share?
I don't think Door County has decided yet. I don't think they've decided if it's going to be based on the value of the village or just split evenly, the value of each town and village. So that is not known, but we were asked to set aside, the village owes $135,000 per year for other fire apparatus. The turnout gear expires, and the turnout gear is very expensive. It's going to be about $10 million over time.
Not turnout gear.
Yeah, the turnout gear expires and the rescue gear, you see my other notes. The big one was the village owes a third. And so per year, it's 135,000. That was the number. And I don't think that included the 26.3 million, right? What do
It
you-
did not, and the thing is that he was stressing that there, because of this new tower system for communication to eliminate drop-off spots. They also are requiring radios, pagers, and air packs that connect with this new system. That was supposed to be $500,000 projected.
So I did talk with Chris on Monday and he said he still doesn't have any numbers or direction from the county. Cause we talked about the CIP. I said, Chris, you know, what are we supposed to do in the capital improvement plan? Are we supposed to push this up? And he said, they still haven't told us how it's gonna be divided and what our share is. So we just left it at the million for 26 in the CIP. Cause yeah, they don't have the answer from the county yet.
And he did say the air packs expire every 15 years and the gear expires every 10 year. And so that's where we need the other money to replace all this gear that's mandated to be replaced. Talked about adding 3 or 4 more towers. Maybe at the county highway building. I don't know if we want to, if that's something that we need to talk to Bertram about when they are doing things, if that,
No, I think it's
or
a
different towers. I think they're gonna try to reuse some towers that are already in place. Some radios are co-located on 5 Cellcom towers. There's a couple towers that are gonna be in Peninsula State Park. Basically, but the one thing he did say was the money needed per year at this point is 135,000. That we have to budget for the replacement of all the gear.
That 135 is what they're saying for the radio, that's what, saying we need a budget for that.
For the life cycle of the, I
Turnout
think the
gear.
turnout gear and the air packs.
Okay, the radio is still on.
The radios are on,
But we have it in the CIP,
yeah,
just not a firm number.
The only
But I guess.
surprise, I think, that is different is the county is replacing the carpet and the epoxy flooring on their part of the building. And so it
Why?
makes sense,
The epoxy?
the epoxy flooring. And their carpet flooring and their epoxy flooring. And it's more efficient if they do everybody's all at once. I said, Chris, we can't, we're trying to keep that budget down. And so Chris said he had talked to them and they'd be willing to work with us on that, so. We did put it in that the carpet would be in 25, because it's the less expensive, with the epoxy flooring in
I
26.
thought epoxy was supposed to last nearly a lifetime.
Yeah, I don't know how long we've been here, 20 years? 20? So it's time, and it was, I can't remember the cost, but it was pretty expensive.
I remember when we put it in.
So. So anyways, so that's, and we pay, even though we're splitting the operational stuff. With the town, 2/3, 1/3 on the carpeting, it's 2080. Cause that agreement is with the county, so that's a different. But anyways, it is in the, I did put it in the budget, so when the finance committee looks at it again, they'll see all those numbers.
okay. And so this is going until 2050. That about $10 million is going to be needed, and so that's where the 135,000 per year is, and that includes money to replace engines, new radios, defibrillators. Things like that. A new tender, engine number 6. To be done in the future, in 2030. Replace engine number 8, that was already done. So this is all part of the CIP that they have. From 2022 to 2050.
And I did put that in, up to 29.
Yeah, green here. Guys did me.
Yes, we did meet. And I mean, as far as most of the stuff is mentioned in the notes. Julie was saying today that she had heard something about a bundler for plastics and things that we might be able to connect.
Yeah, so, the board had wanted to see a bag ban and look at how they could be recycling plastic wrap and things like that, and I did some research. The state of Wisconsin has a couple of years ago passed a law that municipalities cannot do bag bans or recyclable food container mandates. So the committee strategized what we can do, and we talked about a program that Trex has where they will sell or rent us a baler, and then people can recycle their bags and their plastic, and then they give us 14 cents per pound for that. Or that 14 cents per pound goes towards the rent of a baler. And they come and get it, so we don't have delivery or anything. Basically, our role is, where do you store the baler? And then somebody has to go in and make sure the bags are crushed every day and kind of manage that baling process. So that was really optimistic. So the committee talked about that. And then they talked about it being part of a bigger strategy to get people thinking recycling in other areas as well. Recommending the recyclable food containers, looking at,
What about writing a letter to our delightful legislators and ask them to revisit this? And why did they say under Scott Walker's administration that we could not do what we thought was best for our own community?
we actually did have that conversation very briefly. Is this something we should ask the board, to ask the legislator to revisit? I personally think I was really surprised to find, I come from Oregon where you're recycling everything. I was really surprised to find out the state of Wisconsin came up with a ban prohibiting us.
Oh, so we can't put a ban in place?
No, by law.
So, I mean, recycling only does so much. As long as there's always a place to recycle, we're gonna keep using these things. But do we really know where all that plastic goes?
Recycling, plastic
Well,
recycling is.
if we do this with the Trex program, we do know where it's going.
And that was the issue we discussed, is a lot of people say they're recycling and it's just ending up in the garbage. They're just putting it in the garbage. So through this program, we knew exactly that it was indeed being recycled into these Trex products. So that was a good thing. But you're right, Lily, they talked about, you can't just recycle, it has to be part of a bigger campaign. So we agreed I would work on a draft plan, like a 2-page thing or whatever, for the committee to talk at the next meeting on steps forward. So that's where we're at.
I think it's a great idea to write a letter to a legislator and say, let's revisit this ban. We want to make our own ban.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't see why.
That's different than yours.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have, Chair Harf
Yes.
of Green Tier, I forwarded a New York Times article on, tote bags. And because I read that, you guys are gonna or O'Hearn will work on a design for a reusable bag, which incorporates the Green Sister Bay logo.
Yes.
I'd like you all to read the article that Heidi will be sending you and that will be included in the next packet.
Okay.
Because creating more totes, once you read the article, is not a smart idea.
More energy intensive.
It is more energy intensive. I can't remember exactly what the article said. Actually, I sent it to Heidi 3 years ago. And then I resent it to her again when I read this about totes. And you can also find articles on the people just have totes everywhere in their house because everybody's giving them away. I mean, you have to use them for years for them to offset.
I've heard that number's like 200 or 250 times, somewhere around that.
20,000 times. Did you reread it or you just came
I
across it?
glanced through it,
Oh.
so yeah, that number stuck out.
I need to read it, but I mean, it's like, I don't initiate, I sit there and I listen to O'Hearn and all the stuff with New York and how great it is, and my son.
It is not great in New York because when they did the plastic ban, then all of the restaurants came up with, not a canvas tote, not a cotton tote, but some kind of cross in between
Mm.
that people just end up with dozens, if not hundreds, from to-go foods.
Problem.
I mean, I read that article too. You can search it
Mhm.
on the New York Times website. It was not a good idea to ban them there.
Yeah, the surprising thing I've come across, I think the 250 pounds was actually water bottles. Reusable plastic water bottles. The mass of the plastic and the energy used for that, you'd have to reuse it at least 250 times before it becomes anything close to neutral.
Yep.
It's,
That's why I drink aluminum.
it's unintended consequences, yeah.
And if you'd like, I can share the other articles if you want to do a whole bunch of reading.
Please do.
Okay.
You need related gift articles on him?
Historical societies where we're at.
No, that's what it's like.
No, I was still on the second green tier minutes. Schmelzer stated that it may be worth exploring grants through Destination Door County to offer the local businesses opportunities to come up with alternatives to plastic materials. What about the applying for a grant through them for the baler?
Well, we did talk about grants for, that is before we knew that we could apply the rent, or I'm sorry, the poundage to the purchase. We talked about a grant for a larger overall program.
Okay.
I left everybody a packet of notes here. Does anybody have any questions or anything? They're getting better attendance at the farmer's market. They put on a big ad campaign. You probably got it in your mailbox.
I did.
Yeah, and that did help a great deal. John Blossom and I are working on a resolution for the Historical Society regarding the historical overlay in support of that wholeheartedly. But everything else is in here. That was discussed.
I'll say too, the Historic Society used the visitor center at Gateway Park. To teach kids about one room schoolhouse. And they did leave their display in there in case they want to come back, because we're not using the building right now. But it was really neat pictures. They had a good program in there. It was nice to see the building actually be used. So.
They're trying to beef up the children's programs too, so they're making a lot of progress. Their big thing is, their campaign to raise money for the new barn. They do need a lot of money for that. But they have a very good group of people working with them.
How far off are they on the barn?
I think they said they had to raise $3 million.
And where that?
Not quite a minute.
Not quite a million. But at least it's there, it's on site.
They have,
Yeah.
you know, kind of a long range plan thing going with that. They did say that there are some donors with very deep pockets that they're going to tap, so we'll see.
Library Commission?
Nothing to add much more than the notes that are there, except that at the meeting, the new maintenance person is helping the situation by, they had a budget for tree removal for $3,500, and he said that he could do it himself for $2,000, saving $1,500, which is cool. The guy always comes up with ideas at the meeting to save the library money on what they're doing. And he recommended that day holding off on pergola repairs, which they've been wanting to do. And shade needs replacement, but he said they're planning it more for 2026 than doing it now. And on the CIP project in 2025, he was talking about the pond rejuvenation and landscaping cleanup, because I guess when it was developed, they had really kind of planned on it just kind of growing and taking care of itself, which we know things don't do, just like down by the beach. And I was surprised. I run down there quite a bit, and it looks really nice this year, man. So the guys are working down there on rejuvenating that. So he said he himself is going to get in there and clean it up pretty much as part of his projects for the future. And he said the baseboard repairs that are tiled in the hallways need to be replaced because of damage after years of mopping. So that's all that would be added to what's already in the notes.
Marina Committee?
Well, we talked more about the plans for the boathouse. There's about $292,000 raised so far for fixing it up. And they believe they can get the rest of the money before the end of the season. So it sounds like it could be great with, of course, it will go before plan and everything else and the board, but they're talking about having glass doors and lighting up the boat inside, maybe year round, so there's something you can kind of see as you're driving through the village. People like that idea. Anyway, sounds good, and they're working on getting a lot of money together, and it sounds like things are moving forward with rejuvenating the boathouse to make it a museum for the shadow. We discussed parking as we discussed earlier tonight. One project is a need to replace that boardwalk, which I really like, the wooden boardwalk, but it's falling apart. And so we're thinking of new materials so that it doesn't fall apart in the future. Kind of expensive to replace with different materials, but we'll see what happens. And then we're discussing the cancellation policy, trying to figure out how to make that work a little better. Some people are reserving for the whole season and then canceling at the last minute.
I thought they changed that policy last year. Dave was saying that
It's
this
not
spring.
quite changed yet, so something we're working on. But
So, page 27, Allison, if you can notate this on line 22.
I'm sorry, page 27 of the committee reports?
Yes.
Sorry, let me get back there. Is it line 22?
Right, it says Schmelzer noted that the Parks Department is thinking about holding space behind the dog park for the marina just in case it is needed. It's the Marina Committee, or the Parks Committee, not the Parks Department.
Oh, okay.
And then, obviously, as I stated, who's ever doing the minutes needs to read them before sending them off, because there are so many errors. And then on page 28, line 12, I give you credit, Julie, for saying this publicly elsewhere. Schmelzer noted that the Village Finance Committee wants no increases for inflation across all line items in village entities. I would exclude the marina. They are an enterprise fund. You have your own revenues. It has nothing to do with the mill rate or the village's tax levy. So I'm okay with the Marina Committee, depending upon their revenues, their CIP, everything else, whatever the best plan laid forward is for them.
And they are spending money. So, but I did tell them, I said, try to keep it if you can, because the finance committee wants to keep it at 0%.
But they're an enterprise fund.
Yep.
To me, it's just a different ballgame. It's not taxpayer money. I had a question, also on page 28. Line 41, Lino noted that leaving bathrooms open would remove the need to put out porta potties for fishermen launching during late and early boating seasons, but noted that they do not need to be heated to work. As somebody who owns a business very close to the marina, if somebody had to walk all the way down to the village hall, across the boardwalk or whatever, because that's where the bathrooms were, they're still going to come by me. I still think you need porta potties because human beings are lazy and they're gonna take the shortest route, and that's to me. So-
Unless, I think we're keeping those. I mean, the idea is to have the bathrooms at that end open all winter too, right?
Well, maybe once the new ones are
The new
built,
ones.
Right.
but
The new
that
ones.
hasn't happened
Right.
yet, so.
Okay, so we'll say porta potty is still needed.
Until bathrooms on the new marina building are up and running. Berto would appreciate. Thank you.
First, properties and streets.
The minutes are in here for the meeting. If anybody has any discussion, highlights would include a long discussion that we had about the lift station. So at this point, I think we're still waiting for Skylar, for Stantec to get back to us with, a proposed location for the lateral, which has to be replaced. So that's imminent and important. And then, went through the budget and the SIP discussion. Otherwise, let's see what else is in here. That would be swim dock, I think has already been repaired, right?
No, they don't even have a bid on it yet.
Oh, wait, that's right. He said he went out for a bit, sorry. We did go on a walking tour. And we went on 22 locations and, one was, the road in between, Scandia Village and, the medical center, because they requested a lot of different things, but basically a crosswalk so they could safely walk over there, get over there, because it's costly for the facility to transport them simply from, Scan to the building. And so I think that we agreed that we'd probably do a crosswalk, but not, because they wanted something a little bit more. As long as they were able to create a path that was safe, probably paved from some point at Scandia Village to the crosswalk. Otherwise, it's gonna be a little, we think anyway, might be a little tricky for them to maneuver that. And then we went over to Ava Hope Trail. And there's an air, if you're familiar with it, if you know where Paula's building is. Okay, so across the street from Paula's building is behind the apartments there is a lake that's dried up at the moment. And so there was a conversation about pond, sorry, not a lake, pond. Anyway, there was a conversation that they had we'd received a letter from, I'm not quite sure how many signatures there were, 25 signatures. 70, yikes, 70 requesting a local park be put in there. And that location is, we agreed, was not gonna be, not ideal, no. The topography isn't great, probably be better in a different place. So the decision was made to not do anything at this point, because I think we have, not granting, the builder has to give us some money for it, right?
So, right, we had a developer who had to put $30,000 in a
Yeah.
fund to develop.
It's
a park
there. It's there, but probably not in that location, it's not ideal. And so we moved that to a discussion for 2025, I think, right? Or 6.
You know, Denise and I were talking about this, we had different recollections, so we'll have to ask the committee. I thought the committee said, don't put the park in now, but, grade it and seed it, clean it up.
Yeah.
See, and I disagreed with the grading and seeding because I think it needs to be up on top of the hill.
I think it needs to be up the top of the hill. First of all, the drainage and all that stuff, and it's very close proximity to the apartment, to one of the apartment, an end unit on the apartment building, whether they are okay with that or not, hard to say. But anyway, so probably not grading and seeing, but anyway, it will
We'll
happen.
talk about it at
Yeah, not
Parks.
right away, not right away, yep. And let's see what else. I think that was really, we went through parking regulation. Enforcement and,
Decided to stripe and put rowdy blocks on Mill
yeah,
and then
so
close off.
one last,
Gordon.
not one last, but we hope that in addition to other things that we've done, will prevent parking on the, south side of Mill right by, adjacent to Chop. So hopefully that works.
Julie?
That was pretty much it.
I thought of something the other day that pertaining to the buildings we're building.
Mhm.
Something that no one has brought up and I didn't think about, but I don't know if it's too late now for the Parks building. But definitely, I think we should get it into the plan for the admin building, is we need central vacuum.
Oh,
Is he?
no, I'm kidding. It might be too, I don't know if that was in the.
I mean,
Parks building or
Parks
not.
building, it's less of an issue.
The other one, we have plenty of. time.
But there'll be a lot more carpeting probably. I'm imagining in the administration building or whatever, and I think we should have central vac.
I'll talk to him about that.
One other thing, because you had mentioned this, Kurt, in the previous meeting, I think immediately after the meeting, Eric went down and took a look at the lights that are on the stone pillars at the.
I was gonna say
And
thanks.
so he,
Because I went down and checked them out for sure. And that, not only the brightness, but I mean, they actually knocked down the color, it seemed somehow.
they changed the bulb.
They changed the
It's
bulb.
warmer.
Okay, and it
Yeah.
is far less.
Yeah.
He actually did it the night of the board.
That was
When he
sweet.
heard you.
And there's some condensation, in case anybody sees it, on one of the covers that I think we're still trying to figure out.
Just watching it.
There's what, Louise?
Condensation inside the cover.
Yeah.
For one of them and for a brand new light, probably shouldn't be happening, so I think they're trying to figure that out.
Thanks.
Personnel.
This was executive session, so nothing to report there,
And then plan commission.
but there was also, I beg your pardon, there was a different one. And we did, let's see. Yeah, that was the 31st, and then the one last week, we went over the job description for the code compliance, officer. We did discuss the bus driver wage. You'll see that it's in the budget. I think you put it in the budget at 27, however, just to highball it, but unless they have a CDL, the wage will be 25. And they don't need a CDL to drive our particular bus. But if they have one, then we'll compensate them for them, because we do have a woman that's interested in doing it who has a CDL. So it would just, I mean, it's always good to, it's a lot more, a CDL is a larger vehicle, and then there's much more extensive training, a lot more safety, so it's not a bad thing. And then we had a discussion about the cost of living, and the decision was made to keep the cost of living increase flat to last year, which was 2.75. The marina assistant man,
Is that? That's
below.
across the board.
that's across the board.
Okay.
We looked at.
Because I brought up last year, one of my concerns is that what the lowest wage person gets in a COLA
100%, we did talk about it.
versus this.
Yeah.
And I said there should be some kind of happy medium where everybody gets the same.
So I did bring that up. I don't think there was a lot of traction on there, but there was, first there was a misunderstanding about what I was saying, it was just coming flat, reason I was saying, no, let's figure out 1% COLA, cost the village $11,000. So what I was looking at is taking that, holding that 11,000 times 2.75, getting about $30,000 and dividing that by the number of employees. But I also don't think we committed to the model that we're going to do. I think we just said the COLA will be 275. I think they're still. We didn't say
We
how that's
didn't
gonna be.
discuss the model, we did not discuss. it.
So right now it is.
I mean, I can see both sides of it, you're right. So if the base is bigger and it's on a percentage basis. Yep. Yep, I mean, I think the village has done a great job of making, of, getting the salaries in line. And the STEP program has helped in that, in that regard. We did talk about STEP.
So, well, right, because Nate said after last year's budget that he was apprehensive about it, but said that he'd do it for that year. And so is the STEP program moving
Yes.
forward?
Yes.
The STEP
Yeah.
program.
Still don't feel great about it, but it's what the public sector is doing. I mean, if we don't do that, we're gonna be outside of the map.
We actually did talk about the COLA at, different. Should it be different for different rates? That was, part of the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, Julie
And
did a great
the-
chart and she said this is what it is at, if it's 2%, 3%, 4%.
Yeah, and our consultant actually said, well, the cost of eggs are the same for somebody making 100,000 versus somebody making 20,000. So you can't really do that. That's not, everybody's paying the same increased prices. So, but yeah, the motion, it was an actual motion made that to keep it at 2.75, that goes to finance committee.
Well, we were looking at least at the time, and you'll see this in the notes. At the time, the CPI was about projections for 2025. It's currently anticipated to be 2%. Who knows, but that's what they, and it was this time, I think at the time that this was from last year, it was 3.2%. I think.
I'd have to go back to the notes. I think we were at,
So when the COLA
Or-
comes to finance, will you have all those same fancy little charts? Sure. Thank you.
And the marina assistant manager, essentially, he was moved to exempt and should have been. So that was kind of a funny thing, but anyway, he was fine with it. And that's Sam, sorry. And then you'll see matters to be placed on the future. We are gonna, we're working on starting to work on the personnel handbook and also developing, making some revisions and developing new, performance evaluations. So we can we'll look at a couple of different suggestions on how to do it. So that there are different, not only different types of evaluations for a manager versus a staff member, but just for lack of a better word, but also weighting what you're reviewed on. So for instance, if, and then we can do it a bunch of different ways, we just need to decide what we want to do. But for instance, with the way we do it right now, all questions are weighted equally, no matter what. So if you're on time all the time, that's weighted as much as, if you, maybe how you're managing your staff, or, how you're working with other people, et cetera, et cetera. So, there's some merit to having each particular criteria weighted differently, because some probably need more than others, or we can just have it across the board again.
We just thought it was very outdated, but we
Yeah,
can.
well, Denise,
agree,
you're- yeah,
'cause I
Denise completely
wrote
knows,
lots of
yeah.
notes on mine if you read it.
Yeah. So that's in the works, personnel, updating that is in the works, and let's see,
job descriptions.
and the job descriptions, yeah, and then, the, HR consultant that obviously is working on the benefit rates, since Vlad's been in touch with him.
Does
Sure.
Vlad know or has been informed or has found the elusive spreadsheet that I requested 6 times last year?
Yes,
last
yes.
year? Each
It's the one where it's the employees and it shows the breakdown, what are they paying for all their benefits, their hours.
Yeah. You're just still tracking the formulas and updating grades.
And it's not,
Because I would like that at our finance meeting. I'm not I warned staff, I'm not approving a budget unless I get that document this year.
so I have talked to Vlad about it and talked to him about what we can legally give the finance committee. And what we found wasn't one big spreadsheet, it was a file that had each employer position on a different tab. So you can.
That's not
flip
what
through it.
she had sent us in the past.
Then we didn't find it, I guess.
So what you saw was a spreadsheet and yours is on a different tab. each
Yeah, it
employee.
just has to be complete.
So
Can you please share what Natasha shared?
because it was personnel, no copy was ever kept. And I don't think they were ever emailed. When we received them, they were paper copies in an in-person meeting. We left them with Tasha or whoever at the time to dispose of appropriately.
There's, just real quickly, there's some laws associated with it, because
Which don't apply to what I'm asking for.
so this spreadsheet, we have to talk about it. This is the one, Vlad, where I said, did anybody ask for this? We have talk about it before we send it out, because we gotta make sure that we protect the employees and colleagues. But yes, we did talk about it, Denise, we do plan on having that for you. May not be the exact one, but it will be a.
I can kind of come in and sketch it out for you, what we used to get, just so that you're on the right track and don't, create something and then it's not really what we were looking for.
Okay.
When I'm gonna do that, I don't know, but I will try to get up there. Okay. Because I don't have a day off for about 18 days, so.
Plan commission.
I was not at the last meeting, so if anybody has any questions, please don't ask me.
You can ask me, I was there. We did go over the comprehensive plan and the height overlay district and the historical district. We gave Julie some direction.
Did Chad show up? Did you call him?
I have talked to Chad. He said he will be there next Tuesday.
Okay.
It took me a little bit to get in touch with him, but I've talked to him twice and I met him in person once.
Okay.
Who's Chad?
Check it out.
Oh,
Okay, any questions? Okay, SBA.
SBA, I think the main discussion last meeting was Fall Fest. There was an issue there with, the Lions Club and where they were requesting to put their tent up, but because of the Mill Road construction, I think we lost like 3 tent spots, so they have to shift things around. That was a long discussion on how to handle Lions Club, because they had met with them and they wanted it their way or their way. But I think we came up with like an option A or an option B for them. And from what I read, they just sent the agenda last night. The meeting's tomorrow morning. It looks like they agreed, but we'll have to wait for tomorrow. Other than that, they just discussed the previous events, how concerts and movies were going. And then Marina Fest, which is coming up. I think I mentioned this last time, we did lose the major sponsor for Marina Fest, and they were working on finding a new sponsor. I think they did almost make up for that. They had 2 or 3 different businesses. I think one of them was Dorothy Medical here in Sister Bay, sponsoring part of that. Other than that, that is it. We have another meeting tomorrow morning.
Julie, has the coordination meeting started with Fall Fest yet? I think that SBA usually met with parks and that.
They, I'm not part of that, so they would meet directly with
Eric, okay.
Eric.
Is Eric still on? Have you had that meeting yet, Eric?
I think I was trying to get through Marina
Alright.
Fest first.
I recall that was like last time, wasn't it?
I know there's.
Well,
two
this is the
things.
first time they've had Marina
We
Fest.
plan on having a meeting Thursday, excuse me, at 10 about Marina Fest.
Okay, okay.
But Fall Fest in terms of the meeting with parks, it's the first time they've had, I mean, that's
Yeah.
fine arts isn't a big deal, but do a Marina Fest in 6 weeks. Maybe
Yeah.
not quite, whatever, do a
Yeah.
Fall Fest.
Just curious.
Janelle, I know Janelle's done her side getting permits, Eric's lined up. It's just that final coordination. That happens at that point.
I know there's a few.
Is it still 3 days or 2 days?
Two,
Friday, Saturday?
Saturday, Sunday.
Saturday, Sunday.
Mhm.
Tourism zone?
I attended, there wasn't a heck of a lot, that was discussed, Destination Door County was there, to give us their sort of, first chance we had to see their 2025 vision, and that'll come back again. Let's see what else, otherwise,
Bailey's Harbor asked the tourism
Yeah.
zone to, help them with their short-term rental program. And so the tourism zone is discussing that, seeing where that.
yeah, there was a lot of
Help them
resistance.
in what manner and why would it be help that every community would want?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's what basically, what they asked for was to essentially, process the, applications. Not do any kind of, enforcement. No enforcement at all. But process. Well, and they, by the way, I should say, they would pay, they would pay, the tourism zone for that service.
Okay.
I think if they get it working, at least it's something that would make sense for us to use.
Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, it's an admin thing, basically. They said, hey, can you guys do it? And then we'll give you we'll pay you. I don't know what the fee was, to tell you the truth. I don't think we even discussed what the fee was. For room tax collections, May just came in. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, so for the month of May, the county, they only give year to date. And I don't, in the document I have, I drop it into something different, but just so I can see just for the month of May, but, year to date, the county's up 2.2%. Most everybody, Bailey's is flat. Egg Harbor Village is up 8, Towns down 10, but they were still going through construction. Gibraltar is up 2, Liberty Grove is up 8. On a small base, but unfortunately, they're gonna get hurt because of Raleigh's Bay. So, we're up 2. And, Sturgeon Bay's flat. Who did I forget? Ephraim is up almost 4. And Gibraltar's up 3. So, this is through May. June, July, August is when it really. And
Yeah, I don't expect a lot. Great numbers in June for the weather.
No, the weather's gonna be kind of, June will be up 1 or 2. So unless we have an unbelievable July, August, chances are the way the numbers look right now might be about how they look at the end of the year. And I think we had talked about up 3, which is, we could be in that neighborhood. Sounds like it. And then as far as, the other thing that, they look at, but again, this is May, so maybe it's not even worth talking about, but, for the month of May, let's see. The, occupancy for the county was 33% versus last year's 37. Sister Bay, we were 40% on last year's 41, not bad. Our room rate's up about $216 average room rate. Last year was $199. The county average is $137. Yeah, 137, and last year was 124. So, everybody's up a bit, but again, it's May, so the higher rates maybe might not have kicked in yet. But still up to last year. As I look at everybody, except really weird, except Bailey, something weird happened at Bailey's, their average rate was down, but everybody is up. And as far as like how are we in room rate, our average room rate compared to other people, 215, right? So Ephraim is a good one to look at, and their average room rate is 181, on last year's 168. And Gibraltar's is 198 and 188. They have many more short-term rentals than we do. So those are gonna be a little bit higher, but the highest has always been, right around there has always been Egg Harbor. And they are 204, and last year's 182, so everybody's up 10% or so.
And the average room rate takes into account hotel rooms and short-term rentals?
Yeah, anything that's in there.
Anything that's a night?
Anything that's that the tourism zone collects room tax from. So that would be a short-term rental and traditional lodging, or including, kind of hotels, stuff like that. Yeah. So I think that was it.
Utility committee.
Any questions on the minutes?
Village Hall Planning Task Force.
We did not meet.
Make a motion that we accept the committee reports. From by Bill, second by Rose Call, all those in favor?
I,
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, on to 11, matters to be placed in the future agenda of the first committee.
Did you want the county board supervisor report on the next agenda then? Cause I know when Dave was the rep, or the supervisor, we would do we try and get him here.
How many
regular
hours reach out to
schedule.
Patrick?
Well, Patrick said he'd prefer every 2 months.
So we didn't know.
He wasn't able to come.
You know, it's
Well, but
previous
then
one.
then we don't skip September.
He emailed and said that he is planning on being here in October.
So then that means we're going 3 months with. I think we need to
Four-
ask him
4
to be
months?
here in September.
We can ask him that.
I think if he considers he's not being the county board supervisor for Sister Bay. Roughly half of Sister Bay is represented by Bud Collins too.
Well, then Bud needs to be invited. So Bud today. Maybe that was yesterday.
All right, on to 13, executive session, main executive session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19851G. For conferring with legal counsel for government body which is rendering oral or written advice considering strategies adopted by the board with respect to litigation in which it is or likely to become involved. Regarding short-term rental cases. Roll call vote, check.
Who's making the motion?
I'll make, motion by Bell,
Second,
second by Bertle, roll call vote, Bell, yes.
Berto, yes.
Shampoo, yes.
Pointer, yes.
Yes, from Harv.
Roscoe, yes.
House and yes.
Okay, we're in closed session.